My daughter stole my late wife's $100,000 watch, a wedding gift from her grandfather, and sold it to buy a necklace for her boyfriend's mother. When I found out, I suddenly became the bad guy. But I stayed silent, didn't yell, just smiled and said, "I have a secret gift I want to show you." Her face went white. "Thank you for being here. Drop a comment. Where are you watching from? And have you ever faced family betrayal over money or heirlooms?" Note this story blends real emotions with fictionalized elements to spark important conversations about boundaries and legacy. Now let me tell you what that secret gift was. I'd just finished reheating leftover spaghetti that tasted like cardboard because I still couldn't cook worth a damn and was making my weekly rounds through the house. Not checking locks or windows, checking memories. Victoria's reading chair by the window, still angled toward the garden she'd loved. Her coffee mug on my desk, the one that said "World's Okayest Wife." She'd bought it as a joke. I'd never let anyone else use it. And the cabinet in my study, the locked one, the one that held her watch. I'd installed it myself 2 years ago right after the funeral. Solid oak brass hinges a lock that required an actual key. Some people keep ashes, some people keep clothes. I kept the watch because Victoria had worn it every single day from the moment her father clasped it around her wrist on our wedding day until the morning she couldn't lift her arm anymore. A Patek Philippe Calatrava, 1950s, 18-karat white gold with a manual wind movement that ticked like a heartbeat. Her father had given it to her with one piece of advice: time is precious. Don't waste it on people who don't value you. She'd worn it when Michael was born. When Caroline came 2 years later, through every school play, every scraped knee, through the diagnosis, through the treatments, through the nights when she couldn't sleep, and all I could do was hold her hand and feel that watch press between our palms. I kept it in the cabinet because it felt sacred, because every Tuesday evening I'd unlock that cabinet, open the case, and remember. But that Tuesday, when I turned the key, something felt wrong. The lock caught differently, not broken, just different. Like someone else had been using it. I shook it off. Paranoia, I told myself. Grief playing tricks. I didn't open the cabinet that night. Looking back, I think some part of me already knew. Caroline called that same Tuesday. Late. Almost 9. "Hey, Dad." Her voice had that brightness people use when they're about to ask for something. "How are you?" "I'm fine," I said. I was reading a book I wasn't absorbing. "You, Good, really good, actually. Derek and I, you know Derek, right? You've mentioned him. 3 times. Maybe 4. Well, things are getting pretty serious." She paused, waiting. I didn't fill the silence. "Anyway, I was thinking I might stop by this week. Maybe Friday. I wanted to grab some old photos. The ones from Cannon Beach." "Friday's fine." "Great, I'll swing by around 2. Will you be home?" "Probably not," I said. I had a client meeting, an actual reason to leave the house. "You still have your key?" "Yeah, I do." Another pause. "You know, Dad, you really should get out more. Mom wouldn't want you living like this." There it was. The little dig. The suggestion that I was doing grief wrong, that 2 years should have been enough to pack Victoria away and move on. "I'm doing fine, Caroline. I just think I'm fine." I said again, harder. "I'll see you Friday if I'm here." She sighed. That sigh that meant I was being difficult. "Okay. Love you, Dad." "Love you too." I hung up and went back to not reading my book. Friday came. I went to my meeting. When I got home around 4, the house felt different. Caroline's perfume lingered in the hallway. Something floral and expensive. The kind of scent that announces you've been somewhere, even after you've left. I checked the living room. A few photo albums sat on the coffee table. She'd found what she came for. But I couldn't shake the feeling. I went to my study. Everything looked normal. Desk neat. Papers stacked. Victoria's mug right where I'd left it. I walked to the cabinet. Put the key in the lock. It turned smoothly. Too smoothly. I opened the cabinet door. The watch case sat on the shelf where it always did. Same position. Same angle. I reached for it. It was too light. My hands knew the weight of that case the way you know the weight of your own wallet. I'd held it hundreds of times. I opened the case. Empty. The velvet interior stared back at me like an accusation. The watch, Victoria's watch. Her father's last gift, the one thing I'd promised to keep safe, was gone. I checked the shelf below, the drawer. I pulled the cabinet away from the wall, thinking maybe the case had fallen. Nothing. I tore through my study, opened every drawer, checked every shelf, looked in places that made no logical sense because logic had left and panic had taken up residence. Gone. An hour later, I sat on the floor in front of that empty cabinet, the case open in my lap, and tried to remember how to breathe. Caroline had been here. Thursday, while I was out. Caroline, who had a key. Caroline, who'd called to make sure I wouldn't be home. No. That was crazy. Caroline wouldn't, she couldn't, accept. I sat there for another hour. Then I remembered something. 6 months ago, after the Hendersons 3 doors down got broken into, I'd installed security cameras. Front door, back door, and one in the hallway that caught the entrance to my study. I'd set them up, checked that they worked, and forgotten about them. I pulled out my laptop. My hands shook as I logged into the system. Part of me hoped I was wrong. Part of me hoped I'd find the watch somewhere stupid and feel like an idiot for suspecting my own daughter. But a bigger part of me, the part that had felt something wrong all week, already knew what I was going to see. The laptop screen glowed blue in the dark study. I turned off all the lights without thinking about it, maybe because what I was about to watch felt like something that should happen in the dark. Like opening someone else's mail, like eavesdropping on a conversation you were never meant to hear. The security software was clunky. I'd installed it myself following some YouTube tutorial and never bothered to learn all the features. It took me 20 minutes just to figure out how to pull up Thursday's footage. My finger hovered over the play button. I could still walk away. Delete the footage. Call Caroline and ask her directly. Give her the chance to tell me the truth, to explain, to make this something other than what my gut was screaming it was. But I'd been giving Caroline chances her whole life. Chances to be honest. Chances to be kind. Chances to be the daughter Victoria had believed she could be. I clicked play. The timestamp read, Thursday, 2:17 p.m. The hallway outside my study appeared on screen, black and white, slightly grainy but clear enough. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Just an empty hallway. My chest tightened with something that might have been hope. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe Caroline had just grabbed the photo albums and left. Maybe then she appeared. Caroline walked into frame carrying her oversized leather purse, the one Victoria used to joke could fit a small child. She moved quickly, purposefully, not like someone casually browsing for old photographs. She glanced over her shoulder. Once. Twice. Checking if anyone was watching. My daughter. Checking if the coast was clear. She disappeared into my study. The camera angle didn't catch the interior of the room, just the doorway. I knew what she was doing anyway. I'd done it myself 1,000 times. 10 steps to the cabinet. Key from where did she have a copy? Had she taken mine and made a duplicate? 3 minutes passed on the timestamp. 3 minutes of an empty hallway while my daughter stole from me. Then she emerged. The purse hung heavier on her shoulder. Not by much. The watch and its case probably didn't weigh more than a pound, but I could see the difference in how she carried it. The slight adjustment of the strap, the way her hand came up to steady the bag against her hip. She pulled out her phone, started typing as she walked toward the front door. Her lips moved. She was talking to someone. I cranked the volume. The audio was tinny distant, but I caught enough. Got it. Yeah, he'll never even notice. He's too busy mourning to pay attention to anything. The front door closed. She was gone. I sat there staring at the frozen frame. Caroline's face, slightly blurred but unmistakable, caught in profile as she typed on her phone. He'll never even notice. I played it again, and again, and again. Each time I hoped I'd hear something different. Some context that would make this make sense. Some explanation that would transform my daughter from a thief into someone who'd made a terrible mistake for understandable reasons. But the words didn't change. Too busy mourning. Like grief was something shameful. Like loving Victoria enough to keep her memory alive was a character flaw. Like I was the problem here. The third time through, I turned up the volume as high as it would go, listening to every word, every breath, every casual inflection in Caroline's voice as she talked about stealing the most important thing I had left. She sounded pleased with herself. That's what gutted me. Not angry, not desperate, not even guilty. Pleased. Like she'd pulled off something clever. Like she'd solved a problem. Like taking her dead mother's watch from her grieving father was an accomplishment worth celebrating. I closed the laptop. The study fell into darkness again. Just me and Victoria's empty cabinet, and the terrible new knowledge sitting in my chest like a stone. Part of me wanted to call Caroline right then, scream at her, demand she bring it back, threaten police lawyers, whatever it took. But I didn't move. Because something about this didn't add up. Caroline had always been practical, calculating. Even as a kid, she'd thought 3 steps ahead, figured out angles, worked situations to her advantage. Victoria used to call it strategic thinking. I'd called it manipulation, but quietly only to myself, because you're not supposed to think those things about your own child. But a $100,000 watch doesn't just disappear without a plan. Caroline hadn't stolen it on impulse. She'd known exactly when I'd be gone. She'd called earlier in the week to make sure. She'd had a key ready. She'd taken it in broad daylight, confident enough to stop and text someone on her way out. This was premeditated, which meant she'd already thought about what to do with it. You don't steal a Patek Philippe Calatrava from 1952 and pawn it at some strip mall. You can't just list it on Craigslist. A watch like that requires connections, research, a buyer who won't ask questions. Caroline had a buyer. And if she had a buyer, she had a reason for the money. My mind started working through possibilities. Debt Caroline had always lived beyond her means, but she had a decent job, and she'd never asked me for help. Drugs, no. I'd know. Wouldn't I? Then I remembered Tuesday night. The phone call. Derek and I are getting pretty serious. Derek Foster. The boyfriend I'd met exactly once at some restaurant Carolyn had picked, specifically because it was loud enough that we couldn't have a real conversation. Nice enough kid. Worked in tech, wore expensive watches of his own. Had a mother Caroline desperately wanted to impress. I pulled out my phone and did something I hadn't done in years. I looked at Caroline's Instagram. There she was, perfectly curated life on display. Photos with Derek. Photos of brunches that cost more than my grocery bill. Photos of her apartment with its designer furniture and original art. And there from 2 weeks ago, a photo of Derek's mother, Sharon Foster. Caroline had tagged her. The caption read, "Can't wait to be part of this amazing family." I zoomed in on Sharon Foster's profile picture. She wore pearls and diamonds and an expression that suggested she was used to getting exactly what she wanted. I sat back in my chair. Caroline wanted something. Approval, acceptance, a place in the Foster family that she thought she needed to buy her way into. And she'd stolen her mother's watch to pay for it. I should have called her. Should have ended it right there. But that voice kept playing in my head. He'll never even notice. I wanted to see how far she'd go. I wanted to watch her think she'd gotten away with it. I wanted to know exactly who my daughter had become when she thought no one was paying attention. So I saved the footage to 3 different hard drives. And I waited. The knock came early. Too early for a Saturday. 7:30, and I was still in my bathrobe staring at a cup of coffee I hadn't touched when Michael's voice came through the front door. "Dad, you up?" I wasn't ready to see anyone. Hadn't slept. Had spent the entire night watching that footage over and over, listening to Caroline's voice, trying to find some version of reality where my daughter wasn't exactly who that video showed her to be. But Michael had a key, and he was already letting himself in. "Kitchen," I called. He appeared in the doorway holding 2 paper cups from the coffee place Victoria used to love. The one that spelled everyone's name wrong on purpose. His cup said Michael. Mine probably said something like Daniel. Brought reinforcements. He said, setting the cup in front of me. Then he saw my face. "Jesus, Dad. Did you sleep at all?" "Not really." He pulled out a chair, sat down heavily. At 34, Michael still moved like an athlete, all efficient energy and purpose. He had Victoria's eyes. Same dark brown, same way of looking at you, like he could see straight through whatever you were trying to hide. "So," he said, "Caroline called me last night." My hand tightened around the coffee cup. "She sounded weird," Michael continued. "Upset. Said she was worried about you." "Worried?" "Yeah." He studied my face. "She said Mom's watch is missing. Said she asked you about it, and you got defensive. She thinks maybe you sold it." There it was. Caroline's opening move. Get ahead of the story. Make me the problem before I could make her one. She said that. "Dad." Michael leaned forward. "Did you? It's okay if you did. If you needed money." "I didn't sell it." "Okay." He held up his hands. "I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just..." Caroline made it sound like you're not doing great. Like maybe you needed cash and didn't want to tell us. I looked at my son. This good man Victoria and I had raised, who drove across town on a Saturday morning because his sister told him to be worried. Who was sitting in my kitchen trying so hard to be gentle to give me an out, to believe the best of everyone. "Michael," I said slowly, "if I told you Caroline took it, would you believe me?" He blinked. "What?" "If I told you your sister stole your mother's watch, would you believe me over her?" The question hung in the air between us. Michael's jaw worked. "Dad, that's Caroline loved Mom. She wouldn't she?" "No." But his voice wavered. "She wouldn't do that." I stood up. "Come with me." I led him to my study. The laptop was still on my desk. Still open to the security footage paused on Caroline's face as she tucked her phone away. "What is this?" Michael asked. "Thursday afternoon," I said. 2:17 p.m. security camera in the hallway. I hit play. Michael watched in silence. I watched him, saw the exact moment his expression changed, when Caroline glanced over her shoulder, checking if anyone was watching. When she disappeared into my study, when she emerged 3 minutes later with the purse hanging differently. "Dad." "Wait," I said. "There's audio." Caroline's voice filled the room. Tinny. Distant. But clear enough. Got it. Yeah, he'll never even notice. He's too busy mourning to pay attention to anything. Michael's face went pale. I let the video play to the end. Let him see Caroline walk out my front door. Let him sit with what he'd just witnessed. Then I played it again. Stop, Michael said. Dad, stop. I paused it. Michael stood up, sat down, stood up again. She lied to me. Yes, Choktujum. She called me last night and looked me in the eye through the phone and lied to my face. Yes. She made me think you were losing it. That you were so deep in grief you'd sold Mom's watch and couldn't even admit it to yourself. His voice cracked. She made me doubt you. I didn't say anything. Let him work through it. Why? Michael finally asked. Why would she do this? I've been asking myself that all night. No, he shook his head. You know, I can see it on your face. You figured something out. I pulled up Caroline's social media on my phone, showed him the post from 2 weeks ago. Sharon Foster, the caption, the pearls. Michael stared at the screen. Derek's mother. Caroline wants something, I said. Approval, a place in that family, and I think she's willing to pay for it. With Mom's watch. With $100,000 worth of Mom's watch. Michael sat back down, dropped his head into his hands. We have to confront her. Right now. We have to... No. He looked up. What? We wait. Dad. Think about it. I said. Caroline doesn't steal a watch like that without a plan. She has a buyer. She has the money. Or she's about to. And she's going to use it for something. So I want to know what. I want to see the whole picture before we blow it up. Michael stared at me like I'd lost my mind. You want to let her get away with it? I want to let her think she got away with it. There's a difference. I don't. She called you last night and made me the villain, I said. Got you here this morning to check on your poor, confused father, who's so broken by grief he can't even remember selling his own wife's watch. That's not desperation, Michael. That's strategy. She's 3 steps ahead already. Then what do we do? I thought about Victoria, about the way she used to play chess with the kids when they were little, how she'd always told them the same thing. Don't just react. Anticipate. We get 4 steps ahead, I said. We document everything. We figure out her plan, and when she makes her move, we're ready. Michael looked at the frozen frame of Caroline on the screen. His sister. My daughter. A stranger with a familiar face. What if she notices we're watching? She won't, because you're going to call her back. Tell her you checked on me. Tell her I seem fine. Tell her you asked about the watch and I got weird and changed the subject. You want me to lie to her? I want you to protect your mother's memory. There's a difference. Michael closed his eyes. When he opened them, something had shifted. Some last remnant of the kid who believed the best in everyone had burned away. Okay, he said. What do you need me to do? I looked at Victoria's photo on my desk. We wait, and we watch, because Caroline didn't steal $100,000 for nothing. She has a plan, and I need to know what it is before I stop her. Michael sat across from me at the kitchen table, coffee-forgotten eyes sharp. Okay, walk me through it. I pulled up the photo on my phone again. Caroline and Derek at some restaurant opening. Sharon Foster in the background, all pearls and practiced smiles. Derek Foster, tech money, good family, the kind Caroline's always wanted to be part of. And his mother's exactly the type who expects a certain standard. from the women her sons date. I scrolled to another photo. Sharon at a charity gala, another of her at the country club. Caroline's been with Derek for 8 months? Something like that. Long enough to be serious, long enough that meeting the parents matters. And Caroline. I stopped. Tried to find a way to say this that didn't sound like I was trashing my own daughter. Couldn't. Caroline's always believed you can buy your way into places, that the right gesture, the right gift, the right appearance opens doors. Michael nodded slowly. So you think she stole Mom's watch to buy something for Derek's mother? $100,000 buys a lot of goodwill. Or she has debt, or she's in some kind of trouble. Maybe. I turned the laptop toward him. But look at her social media. Does that look like someone in trouble? Michael scrolled through Caroline's feed. Photos of brunches at expensive restaurants, weekend trips to wine country, designer handbags casually visible in the background of selfies. She's always lived beyond her means, he said. But she's never stolen before. Not like this. This is... I searched for the word. Calculated. This is someone who knows exactly what they want and exactly what it costs. Michael leaned back in his chair. So what do? We can't just wait around for her to spend the money. She already has. That's the only thing that makes sense. You don't steal a watch on Thursday and sit on it. She had a buyer lined up. How do you know? Because this wasn't impulse. She called me Tuesday to make sure I'd be gone Friday. That's 3 days of planning at minimum. I stood up, started pacing. A Patek Philippe from the 50s. You can't just walk into a pawn shop. She needed a collector, someone who'd pay cash and not ask questions. Michael watched me work through it. You sound like you've been thinking about this all night. I have. So how do we find the buyer? We don't. I pulled out my phone. Harold does. Harold Peterson had been my lawyer for 15 years, had handled Victoria's will, her affairs. After she died, all the paperwork that comes with losing someone. He'd also been her friend, had known her since college, had stood up at our wedding, had sat with me at the funeral when I couldn't stand on my own. I called him. Saturday morning early, but Harold answered on the second ring. Daniel, everything okay? I need a favor. Name it. I told him about the watch, about Caroline, about the footage. His silence on the other end said more than words could. What do you need? He finally asked. Collector network. Someone sold a 1950s Patek Philippe Calatrava in the last week. Cash deal. I need to know who bought it. That's specific. Can you do it? Another pause. Give me until Monday. Monday came faster than I expected. Harold called at 9 a.m. sharp. Malcolm Reed, he said. Collector out of downtown. Specializes in vintage Patek Philippe. He bought a Calatrava 3 weeks ago. Paid $100,000 cash. Seller was a young woman. Gave the name Caroline Hayes. Hayes. Her mother's maiden name. Close enough to not raise flags, different enough to create distance. Can you get me his contact information? Already did. But Daniel... Harold's voice shifted. This is grand theft. You could press charges. I know. Do you want me to start that process? I looked at Victoria's photo on my desk, thought about what she'd want, what she'd do. Not yet, I said. I need to see how far this goes. Harold didn't argue, just sent me Malcolm Reed's number and told me to call if I needed anything else. Next was the jewelry stores. There were only 3 in Portland that carried pieces in the $90,000 range. Michael and I split them. He took 2, I took 1. My call got lucky. The manager, a woman named Lisa Henderson, with a voice that suggested she'd heard every story twice, remembered the sale immediately. Caroline Morrison, last Tuesday, diamond necklace, $90,300. Paid cash. She paused. Is there a problem? No problem. I lied. Just confirming a gift purchase. Well, it was quite the gift. Custom piece. She knew exactly what she wanted. I thanked her and hung up. Michael called 10 minutes later. Dead end on my two, you... Got it. Caroline bought a $90,000 necklace last Tuesday. Same week she stole the watch. Jesus. Timeline fits, amounts fit. She had a plan from the start. Michael was quiet for a moment. So what now? We confront her. Not yet. I want to know who the necklace is for. I didn't have to wait long. Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number. Portland area code. Daniel Morrison. Speaking. This is Paul Foster, Derek's father. His voice was warm, genuine. The kind of voice that belonged to someone who'd never had to fake sincerity. My wife Sharon and I are hosting a small barbecue this Saturday. Just family getting to know each other. Derek mentioned Caroline's father, and I thought it would be nice if you could join us. I sat very still. That's kind of you. We're excited to meet you. Caroline speaks very highly of you. I bet she does. Derek and Caroline have been so happy together, Paul continued. And Sharon, well, Sharon loves bringing people together. She thinks of these gatherings as a way to build family. I appreciate the invitation. We'd love to have you. 2 o'clock on Saturday, Pearl District. I'll text you the address. There was a pause. Then Paul's voice softened. Derek mentioned your wife passed a few years ago. I'm very sorry for your loss. I lost my father a while back. Grief it's its own thing, isn't it? Something in his tone caught me off guard. Real empathy. Not the performative kind people trot out at funerals. Yes, I said. It is. Well, we'd be honored if you'd join us. No pressure, but it would mean a lot. I'll be there. Wonderful. Looking forward to meeting you, Daniel. I hung up and immediately called Michael. Saturday, I said. Foster's house, Pearl District. Be ready. Dad. Michael's voice dropped. Are you absolutely sure about this? I looked at Victoria's photo, her smile, the watch on her wrist in that old picture from our anniversary. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Friday night. The house was quiet except for the rhythmic tap of Michael's fingers against his laptop. We sat across from each other in the living room, him on the couch, with his screen open, me in Victoria's reading chair with a coffee I hadn't touched. He'd brought everything the footage read signed receipt, the jeweler's invoice. Even screenshots of Caroline's Instagram caption, "Can't wait to be part of this amazing family," posted 3 weeks ago, alongside a photo of Derek and Sharon in front of a Pearl District bistro. Michael looked up from the screen. Okay, Dad, walk me through it again? I leaned forward, elbows on knees. She'll give Sharon the necklace, probably right after we eat. Big moment. Cameras out. This is for you because you've welcomed me like a daughter. Michael's jaw tightened. Then what? Then I ask where she got it. And when she lies, you play the video. He nodded slowly, fingers hovering over the trackpad. And if Derek freaks out, or Paul, or if Sharon starts crying, I met his eyes. Then we explain, calmly, with the paperwork. Reed's contact info is on the receipt. He'll verify the sale if anyone asks. Lisa Henderson at the jewelry store already confirmed the timeline. Everything matches. Michael scrolled through the files one more time, checking the order. Video first, then Reed's receipt, then the jeweler's invoice showing Caroline's name and the 90/30 charge. He'd organized it like a prosecutor building a case. "What if she says you gave her permission?" Michael asked. "Then we ask her to explain the audio." He replayed the clip just 5 seconds, Caroline's voice sharp and dismissive. "He'll never notice. He's too busy mourning to pay attention to anything." Michael stopped it. "God, I hate hearing that." "So do I." He closed the laptop and sat back, rubbing his face with both hands. For a moment, he looked younger than 32. Looked like the kid who used to sit at this same table doing homework, while Victoria graded papers beside him. "Dad," he said quietly, "if this is too hard." "It's not about hard or easy." "Then what?" I looked past him toward the window where the streetlight caught the edge of Victoria's orchid on the sill. She'd kept that thing alive for 11 years. Repotted it, talked to it, watered it on Wednesdays without fail. When she got too sick to reach it, I took over. It bloomed last spring, small white flowers that lasted 3 weeks. "It's about what's right," I said. Michael studied me for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Mom would be proud of you." "I hope so." We went over it twice more. The timing, the tone, when to let Caroline talk and when to cut her off. Michael made notes in his phone bullet points, like he was prepping for a presentation. "And if Caroline storms out," he asked, "let her. And if Derek breaks up with her right there," I shrugged. "That's his choice." Michael leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "You know what's going to happen right after tomorrow. She's going to be furious. She'll tell everyone you humiliated her. She'll say you're bitter and controlling and that you've never gotten over Mom. Probably. She might never speak to you again. I know. Are you okay with that?" I wasn't sure how to answer. Was I okay with losing my daughter? No. Was I okay with losing the version of Caroline who'd stolen from her dead mother and lied about it to my face? Yes, maybe. I didn't know. "I'm okay with protecting your mother's memory," I said finally. "I'm okay with not letting Caroline get away with this. If that costs me a relationship that's already broken, then so be it." Michael nodded again, but he didn't look convinced. He looked tired. We both did. By 11, he stood to leave. "I'll meet you there tomorrow, 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock. He paused at the door. "Do you think she'll apologize after we show her the proof?" I thought about that. About the Caroline I used to know, the one who cried at dog movies and brought Victoria flowers on Mother's Day. And about the Caroline who'd walked into my study 3 weeks ago and taken a watch worth $100,000 while I was at the grocery store. "No," I said. "I think she'll double down. I think she'll attack us." "Yeah," Michael said softly. "Me too." He left. I locked the door behind him and stood in the hallway for a minute, looking at the spot where the camera had filmed Caroline slipping the watch into her purse. The floorboards creaked. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked twice and went quiet. I walked back to the living room and sat in Victoria's chair again. Picked up the framed photo on the side table, our wedding day, 1986, outside a chapel in Cannon Beach. Victoria wore a cream dress and her father's watch. She was laughing at something I'd said, her head tilted back, her hand resting on my chest. Her father had died 3 months after that photo was taken. Heart attack in his sleep. The watch was all she had left of him. She wore it every day for 30 years. Through Michael's birth. Through Caroline's. Through vacations and holidays and ordinary Tuesdays. Through 6 months of treatment when her wrists got so thin the band had to be adjusted twice. He'd told her once the day he gave it to her, "Time is precious. Don't waste it on people who don't value you." The irony was so sharp, it hurt. I set the photo down and checked my phone. No messages. Outside the street was dark and still. I thought about calling Michael back, telling him to forget it. We didn't have to do this. We could let it go. Move on. Pretend it never happened. But that was a lie. Because it did happen, and pretending wouldn't bring the watch back, or erase the audio, or undo the fact that my daughter had stolen from her dead mother and framed me for it. Justice or revenge, both, and I was okay with that. I turned off the lights and went upstairs. Stood in the doorway of the bedroom for a moment, staring at the empty side of the bed. I still reached for her sometimes in the mornings. Still woke up expecting to hear her voice in the kitchen. Still smelled her perfume in the closet when I opened the door. 2 years, and it still felt like yesterday. I didn't sleep well. Woke up twice, once from a dream I couldn't remember, and once to the sound of rain on the window. By 6, I was up for good, making coffee in the dark. Saturday morning, the day I'd been dreading and preparing for all week. I showered, dressed in khakis and a button-down, casual but deliberate. I wanted to look like someone who had his act together. Someone who knew exactly what he was doing. I packed Michael's laptop into a messenger bag along with printed copies of the receipts. Put the bag in the passenger seat of my car. Texted Michael on my way. He replied immediately, "See you there." I stood in the entryway for a minute, keys in hand. Looked at the wedding photo one more time. Thought about what Victoria would say if she were here. Probably something like, "Don't let them take advantage of you. Stand up, speak up." She'd been fierce about fairness. Zero tolerance for lies or manipulation. She would have confronted Caroline herself, calmly, methodically, and without hesitation. I locked the door behind me and got in the car. Rolled the windows down, turned the radio off. I wanted to hear myself think. Somewhere around the Willamette River Bridge, I stopped thinking altogether. It was time to act. Paul Foster met me at the door with a firm handshake and a cold beer. "Daniel, glad you could make it." His grip was solid, his smile genuine. He wore a blazer's cap and a faded polo shirt, casual, but the kind of casual that cost money. Behind him, the house opened into a spacious living room with hardwood floors and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a backyard deck. "Thanks for having me," I said. "Of course. Come on back. Sharon's got the grill going." I followed him through the house, past framed photos of Derek at various ages, Little League, high school graduation, what looked like a college fraternity formal. The kitchen was all granite and stainless steel. Through the sliding glass doors, I could see the deck string lights overhead, a gas grill billowing smoke, a long table set with plates and napkins weighted down by river stones. Sharon Foster stood at the grill, flipping burger patties with a practiced hand. She turned when she heard us, wiping her hands on her apron, and broke into a warm smile. "Mr. Morrison, how wonderful to finally meet you. Caroline speaks so highly of you." I shook her hand. "Please call me Daniel." She was in her late 50s, blonde hair, pulled back in a loose bun, wearing a linen blouse and capri pants. Gracious, put together. The kind of woman who made hosting look effortless. "Caroline speaks highly of me," I said, keeping my tone light. Sharon laughed. "Oh, constantly. She adores you." I smiled and said nothing. Michael's words echoed in my head. "She'll tell everyone you humiliated her. She'll say you're bitter and controlling." "Yeah. Adoration." "Sure." Derek appeared from the side yard carrying a bowl of potato salad. He was tall, clean-cut, wearing chinos and a button-down with the sleeves rolled up. He set the bowl down and extended his hand. "Mr. Morrison, thank you for coming, sir." "Derek, Good to meet you. His handshake was polite but tentative, like he wasn't quite sure what to make of me. I didn't blame him. If I were in his shoes meeting my girlfriend's father for the first time at a family barbecue, I'd be nervous too. Can I get you anything? He asked. We've got beer, wine, lemonade. I'm good with this, thanks. He nodded and retreated to the grill to help his mother. Paul guided me to a chair at the table and I sat scanning the yard. Neat hedges, a vegetable garden in the corner, a hammock strung between two trees. It was the kind of place you saw in home magazines, tasteful, comfortable, expensive without being ostentatious. 15 minutes later, Caroline arrived. She came through the sliding door holding a bottle of rosé, laughing at something Sharon had said. Then she saw me. Her smile faltered just for a second before she recovered and plastered on a bright, artificial grin. Dad, I didn't know you were invited. Liar. She absolutely knew. Paul had told me he'd mentioned it to Derek, who would have told Caroline. But she hadn't expected me to actually show up. Surprise, I said evenly. She crossed the deck and kissed me on the cheek. Her perfume overwhelming. It's so good to see you. Her voice was loud, performative, for the Fosters' benefit. You too, I said. She pulled back, still smiling, but her eyes were sharp, calculating. She was trying to figure out why I was here, whether I knew, whether Michael had told me anything. I gave her nothing. Michael arrived 10 minutes later, alone. He nodded at me across the deck just once, and I nodded back. The signal was clear, ready when you are. We ate. Burgers, potato salad, grilled corn, coleslaw. Sharon was an excellent host, keeping the conversation flowing, asking about my work, my hobbies, how long I'd lived in Lake Oswego. Paul told a story about Derek's first job out of college, something involving a disastrous presentation and a broken projector. Derek groaned good-naturedly, and Caroline laughed at all the right moments, touching Sharon's arm, leaning into Derek's shoulder. She was performing, playing the role of the devoted girlfriend, the respectful future daughter-in-law. And she was good at it. Sharon clearly adored her. Paul seemed charmed. Derek looked at her like she was the best thing that had ever happened to him. I watched her and felt nothing but cold, hard clarity. Dessert came out, berry cobbler with vanilla ice cream. Sharon served it herself, beaming as everyone complimented her baking. Caroline ate slowly, deliberately, making a show of savoring every bite. Then she stood. Can I have everyone's attention for a minute? The table went quiet. Sharon set down her fork, looking curious. Paul leaned back in his chair. Derek frowned, slightly confused. Caroline smiled, radiant and confident. I just want to say thank you to Sharon and Paul for welcoming me into your family, for making me feel like I belong here. Derek and I. She reached for his hand. We're building something really special, and I wanted to show you how much that means to me. She reached into the oversized purse she'd brought and pulled out a small box wrapped in Tiffany blue paper. Sharon's eyes widened. Caroline, you didn't have to. I wanted to. Caroline handed her the box. Sharon unwrapped it carefully, folding the paper, opening the lid. Then she gasped. The necklace caught the light diamond sapphires, platinum glittering like ice under the string lights. It was breathtaking. Even from where I sat, I could see the craftsmanship, the weight, the value. Sharon pressed a hand to her chest. Caroline, this is stunning. Do you like it? Caroline's voice was soft, hopeful. Like it, honey. I love it. But this must have cost a fortune. You're worth it, Caroline said simply. Paul leaned over to look, whistling low. That's incredibly generous, Caroline. Derek stared at the necklace, then at Caroline. Babe, when did you... I've been saving, Caroline said smoothly. I wanted it to be perfect. Sharon stood, pulling Caroline into a hug. Thank you. Thank you so much. Caroline helped her fasten it around her neck. The clasp clicked. Sharon touched it with trembling fingers, turning to show Paul, who nodded approvingly. Beautiful, he said. Everyone clapped. Derek stood and kissed Caroline on the temple. You're amazing, he murmured. Caroline stepped back, admiring her work. Sharon glowed, touching the necklace like it was made of starlight. Everyone was smiling. Everyone except Michael and me, and that's when I stood. It's beautiful, Sharon, I said. My voice was calm. Too calm. Caroline's smile froze. Just for a second. But I saw it. She knew. Somewhere deep down, she knew. I stood. The conversation around the table didn't stop. Immediately, Sharon was still admiring the necklace. Paul was refilling his wine. But Michael caught my movement and straightened in his chair. Caroline, I said. My voice cut through the chatter like a blade. That necklace must have cost quite a bit. What did you say you do for work again? The table went quiet. Caroline blinked, her smile still frozen in place. I've been saving, Dad. I told you. I wanted to do something special. Saving, I repeated. For how long? That's personal. Personal, I nodded slowly. So you won't tell me where the money came from? Her eyes darted to Derek, then back to me. I don't think this is the time or place. Because 3 weeks ago, I continued, my voice calm and deliberate. Something valuable went missing from my house. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the breeze seemed to stop. Derek frowned. Mr. Morrison, I don't understand what you're... A Patek Philippe Calatrava, I said, looking directly at Caroline. My late wife's watch, worth $100,000, a wedding gift from her father. Sharon's hand flew to her throat, not to the necklace, not yet, but to her collarbone, as if steadying herself. Paul set down his wine glass with a soft clink. Caroline's face went pale, but she forced a laugh. Dad, what are you even talking about? You probably just misplaced it. You've been so scattered since Mom... I didn't misplace it. Well, maybe you sold it. You've been stressed about finances and... I didn't sell it, Caroline. Her jaw tightened. Then I don't know what to tell you. I don't know anything about a missing watch. Don't you? No. Her voice was rising, now defensive. And I don't appreciate you coming to my boyfriend's house and accusing me of what exactly? Theft in front of his parents. Sharon looked between us, her face stricken. Daniel, surely you're not suggesting... I'm not suggesting anything, Sharon. I kept my eyes on Caroline. I'm stating a fact. 3 weeks ago, my wife's watch was stolen from a locked cabinet in my study. And 1 week later, a diamond necklace worth $90,000 was purchased at a jewelry store in downtown Portland. Paul's expression shifted. He wasn't smiling anymore. Caroline's hands trembled. This is insane. Dad, you're embarrassing me. The buyer. I continued, my voice steady. Gave the name Caroline Morrison. Derek turned to her, his face confused. Babe, you said you inherited money from your grandmother. I did. Caroline's voice cracked. I did inherit money from my maternal grandmother. Dad, tell them. Victoria's mother, I said slowly, is alive and well in Scottsdale, Arizona. I spoke to her last week. Caroline's face drained of color. Derek stared at her. Wait, you said... And even if there had been an inheritance, Michael said, standing and pulling his laptop from the messenger bag at his feet, the timeline doesn't match. Paul put a hand on Derek's shoulder. Son, what's going on here? Sharon touched the necklace, her fingers trembling. Daniel, what are you saying? I looked at her, this kind, gracious woman who'd welcomed Caroline into her home, who'd just been given a gift purchased with stolen money, and felt a pang of guilt. She didn't deserve this. None of them did. But the truth wasn't optional. I'm saying, I said quietly, that the necklace you're wearing was purchased with money Caroline got from selling my wife's watch, without my knowledge, without my permission. That's a lie. Caroline's voice was shrill, now panicked. That's a complete lie, I would never. Then explain the receipt, I said. Michael opened his laptop and turned it toward the table. 3 weeks ago, a woman matching Caroline's description sold a 1952 Patek Philippe Calatrava to a private collector named Malcolm Reed. He paid $100,000 in cash. He kept a receipt and a photo of the seller. Caroline's breath hitched. How did you? Mr. Reed was very cooperative, Michael said evenly. As was Lisa Henderson, the manager at the jewelry store where you bought the necklace. She remembers you. She remembers the transaction. She still has your credit card receipt on file. Derek took a step back from Caroline, his face pale. You told me you inherited money. I did. Caroline's voice was desperate now. Derek, I swear from a grandmother who's still alive. His voice was quiet, hurt. No, there was a different look. It's complicated, okay? It's not complicated, I said. You stole from me. You lied about it. And now you're lying again. Caroline whirled on me, her eyes blazing. You have no proof. You can't prove anything. Actually, Michael said, his hand hovering over the laptop's trackpad. We can. He looked at me. I nodded. 3 weeks ago. Michael continued, his voice steady but strained. Dad installed security cameras in the house after a neighbor was burglarized. He's never checked the footage until now. Caroline's face went from pale to gray. Everyone might want to gather around, Michael said. This won't take long. Paul stood slowly, followed by Sharon and Derek. They moved toward the laptop, expressions ranging from confusion to dawning horror. Caroline stayed where she was, frozen, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. Michael's finger hovered over the play button. His hand was shaking. He didn't want to do this. Neither did I. But some things had to be brought into the light. I met Caroline's eyes across the table. She stared back at me, and for just a moment, I saw something flicker in her expression. Not remorse, not guilt, but rage. Pure, unfiltered rage. "Hot Dad," she whispered. "Don't." I didn't answer. Michael pressed play. The screen filled with grainy footage, black and white timestamp in the corner, Thursday, 2:17 p.m., 3 weeks ago. Everyone leaned in. Sharon, Paul, Derek, even a couple of neighbors I hadn't noticed earlier standing at the edge of the deck with drinks in their hands. The hallway appeared first. Empty. Then Caroline walked into frame. She moved quickly, purposefully. Glanced over her shoulder once, then pushed open the door to my study. The camera angle shifted, must have been the one I'd installed inside the room, angled toward the cabinet. Caroline crossed to the cabinet, pulled a key from her pocket, unlocked it. The audio crackled, and then her voice came through clear and sharp. "Yeah, I got it. The collector said 100,000 cash. Then I'm going straight to buy the necklace for Sharon. She's going to love me. This is going to seal everything." She was on the phone, talking to someone. Her tone was casual, confident, like she was discussing dinner plans. She opened the cabinet door, pulled out the rosewood box, opened it, looked at the watch for a moment, just a moment, then closed the box and slipped it into her oversized purse. She locked the cabinet, pocketed the key, walked out. The video ended. The silence that followed was suffocating. I looked around the table. Sharon's hand was over her mouth, her face drained of color. Paul's jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle twitching. Derek stood frozen, staring at the screen like he was watching a stranger. One of the neighbors, a woman in her 40s, whispered something to the man beside her. They both looked at Caroline, then looked away. Caroline stood perfectly still. Her hands hung at her sides. Her face was blank, expressionless, like her brain had short-circuited. Paul was the first to speak. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the deck like a thunderclap. "Caroline, did we all just watch you steal from your father?" Caroline blinked. Once. Twice. Then something in her snapped. "Yes." Her voice was loud, defiant. "Yes, I took it. But Dad wasn't using it. It was just sitting there in a locked box like some kind of shrine. I didn't move, didn't respond. I wanted to hear what she'd say next." "It was Mom's," I said quietly. Caroline whirled on me, her eyes blazing. "Mom's dead, Dad. She's been dead for 2 years. There were audible gasps from the crowd. Sharon took a step back. The neighbor woman set down her drink and stared. "That watch can't bring her back." Caroline's voice was shrill, now cracking at the edges. "What good is it doing rotting in a cabinet? At least now it's doing something. At least it matters." Michael stood, his face flushed. "You told me Dad sold it. You looked me in the eye and lied." Caroline turned on him, her expression vicious. "Because he's obsessed, Michael. He's stuck in the past, while the rest of us are trying to live. So you stole from him." Michael's voice was shaking with anger. "Frog, you stole Mom's watch, and then framed him for it." "I didn't frame anyone, I just—" She threw up her hands. "You wouldn't understand, neither of you would. Try us," I said. She spun back to me, breathing hard. "You've been a ghost for 2 years, Dad. Walking around that house like a zombie. Clinging to every piece of her like if you let go, you'll disappear too. Do you know what that's like? Watching you waste away. So you thought stealing from me would help. I thought." Her voice broke. I thought if I could do something good with it, if I could make someone else happy." "You thought Sharon would love you," Paul said flatly. Caroline flinched. "I thought yes. I thought if I showed Derek's family that I'm serious, that I'm committed, that I'm worth what?" Derek's voice was so quiet I barely heard it. "Worth lying to, worth stealing for." She turned to him, her eyes desperate. "Derek, I did this for us. For our future. For... You bought my mother a $90,000 necklace with stolen money," Derek said. His voice was hollow. "And you lied to me about where it came from. I was going to tell you. I just needed the right time." "When?" His voice rose. "When was the right time, Caroline? After we got married, after we had kids. When?" Caroline's face crumpled. She turned to Sharon, her hands clasped like she was praying. "Sharon, please. I wanted to give you something beautiful, something meaningful. I'm sorry I lied about where it came from, but the intention was real. I love Derek. I love your family. I just wanted to show you." Sharon's hand went to the clasp of the necklace. Her fingers trembled. "Sharon, please don't." Caroline's voice cracked, but Sharon was already fumbling with the clasp, her hands shaking so badly that Paul stepped forward to help. The necklace came free. Sharon held it for a moment, staring at it like it was a snake. Then she held it out. Not to Caroline, to me. "Mr. Morrison," she said, her voice choked. "Please take it. I don't want anything that was bought with stolen money." Caroline's face collapsed. "Sharon, wait. Don't." Sharon stepped back away from Caroline like she was contagious. "Don't say another word to me." Paul put a hand on Sharon's shoulder, steadying her. He looked at Caroline, and for the first time since the video had played, I saw something other than shock in his expression. Disgust. "I think," he said quietly, "you should leave." Caroline stared at him. "What?" "You heard me." Paul's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. "You need to leave. Now." "Derek!" Caroline turned to him, pleading. "And Derek, please tell them." But Derek wasn't looking at her anymore. He was looking at the ground, his jaw tight, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "Derek," Caroline whispered. "Please." He didn't answer. She stood there for another moment, looking from Derek to Sharon to Paul, waiting for anyone to defend her. No one did. Finally, she turned and walked toward the sliding glass door. Her steps were stiff, mechanical. She didn't look back. The door slid shut behind her. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Sharon sank into a chair and started to cry. I took the necklace from Sharon. It was heavier than I expected, cold platinum and diamonds pressing into my palm. The weight of it felt wrong, like holding something that should never have existed. I looked at Caroline. She stood near the edge of the deck, arms wrapped around herself, mascara streaked down her cheeks. For a moment she looked young, vulnerable, like the little girl who used to climb into my lap and ask me to read her stories. Then I remembered the video, the audio, the lies. "You want to talk about value," I said. My voice was steady, but barely. "Let me tell you about that watch." Caroline's eyes flickered, but she didn't respond. "Victoria's father gave her that watch on our wedding day," I said. "It was the last gift he ever gave her. He died 3 months later. Heart attack in his sleep. 58 years old." Sharon made a soft sound like a sob caught in her throat. "She wore it the day you were born, Caroline. The day Michael was born. She wore it to every school play, every band concert, every parent-teacher conference. She wore it to her first chemo appointment, her second, her 10th. I could feel the eyes on me, Paul, Sharon, Derek, Michael, the neighbors, still frozen at the edge of the deck. But I kept my focus on Caroline. She wore it through 6 months of treatment," I continued. "Through surgeries, through nights when the pain was so bad, she couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't do anything but hold my hand and wait for morning." My voice cracked. I steadied it. "She wore it the day the doctor told us there was nothing else they could do." 6 months, he said, maybe less. She looked at me, and the first thing she did, was check that watch, like she was trying to calculate how much time she had left. Caroline's face was pale. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but she didn't speak. "She wore it the morning she died," I said quietly. Now she was so weak by then she could barely lift her arm. But she held my hand, and I felt that watch against my wrist, and she looked at me and said, "Keep it safe. For Caroline. For our daughter." My throat tightened. I forced the words out. It was supposed to be yours on your wedding day, a symbol of her strength, her love, everything she fought to stay here for. But you didn't wait. You didn't ask. You stole it, sold it like it was nothing, and then you called her memory worthless. Dad. Caroline's voice was barely a whisper. You're right about one thing, I said, and she's gone. But that watch was all I had left of the woman I loved for 30 years. And you traded it for this. I held up the necklace, letting it dangle in the light. A piece of jewelry to impress someone else's mother. I turned away from her, walked over to Harold Peterson, who'd been standing silently near the edge of the deck. I handed him the necklace. Make sure Reed gets his money back, I said. Harold nodded, his expression grim. I'll take care of it. I turned back to Caroline. She was crying openly now, but I felt nothing. No pity, no sympathy, just exhaustion. Don't come to the house, I said. Don't call me until you understand what you've actually done, who you've hurt, and why it matters. You're not my daughter. Her face crumpled. Dad, please. I walked past her, stopped at Michael's side. He looked at me, his expression unreadable, and nodded once. Then I turned to Paul and Sharon. I'm sorry, I said. I didn't want to do this here, but she left me no choice. Paul stepped forward and put a hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing, Daniel. Sharon nodded, wiping her eyes. I'm so sorry for all of it. It's not your fault, I said. Behind me, I heard Derek's voice, quiet, strained, but steady. Caroline. I turned. He was standing a few feet away from her, hands in his pockets, jaw tight. When you told me you saved money to buy that necklace, he said slowly, I believed you. When you said you wanted to honor my mother, I thought it was beautiful. Caroline reached for him. Derek, please. He stepped back. But you lied. To me. To my parents. To your own father. I did it for us. Caroline's voice broke. I did it so your family would accept me, so we could have a future. You did it for yourself, Derek said. His voice was flat, emotionless. You used my mother. You made me complicit in stealing from a man who just lost his wife. You turned something that should have been sacred into this. Paul moved to Derek's side, putting a hand on his shoulder. Son. Derek didn't look away from Caroline. I don't know who you are. The woman I thought I loved would never do this. We're done. Caroline's breath hitched. You don't mean that. Derek, please, I love you. Don't. His voice was sharp now. Just don't. Sharon stepped forward, her expression cold. You need to leave, now. Caroline looked around the deck at Derek, at Sharon, at Paul, at the neighbors who'd been watching in stunned silence. She looked at Michael. He met her eyes for a moment, then looked away. Michael, she whispered. Please. Go, Caroline, he said quietly. She stood there for another long moment, trembling, mascara running, arms wrapped around herself, like she was trying to hold herself together. Then she turned and walked toward the gate. No one followed. No one said goodbye. The gate swung shut behind her with a metallic clang. For a long time, no one moved. Then Paul Foster put a hand on my shoulder again. Daniel, he said softly. I'm sorry you had to do that here, but you did the right thing. I nodded. I didn't trust my voice anymore. Sharon sank back into her chair, her face in her hands. Paul moved to her side, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Michael stood beside me, silent and still, One of the neighbors, the woman who'd whispered earlier, set down her drink and quietly made her way to the gate. The others followed. Within minutes, the deck was nearly empty. Just me, Michael, Paul, Sharon, and Derek. Derek sat down heavily in a chair, elbows on his knees, staring at the ground. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in the last 30 minutes. Paul squeezed my shoulder once more, then let go. "If you need anything," he said. "Anything at all, call me." "Thank you," I managed. Michael touched my arm. "Dad, we should go." I nodded. Together we walked toward the gate. Behind us I heard Sharon crying softly and Paul murmuring something I couldn't make out. I didn't look back. Caroline lost everything that afternoon. Derek, respect family. If you're still here, drop a 1 below. Quick note, this story blends real lessons with fictionalized moments. If that's not for you, feel free to exit now. Otherwise, let's continue. The aftermath reveals the most important lessons. The barbecue ended in silence. The neighbors left first, awkward goodbyes, sympathetic glances, nobody quite knowing what to say. One woman squeezed my hand on her way out. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. I nodded and said nothing. Paul walked Michael and me to the car. His face was drawn, tired. "Ma, Daniel," he said, "if you need help getting the watch back, I have connections in the collector community. Whatever you need." "I appreciate that, Paul." Sharon appeared in the doorway behind him, arms wrapped around herself. "Mr. Morrison, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." "I know Sharon," I said. "Thank you." Derek stood on the porch, looking lost. He stepped forward hesitantly. "Mr. Morrison, sir? I swear to God I didn't know anything about this." "I believe you, son," I said. "I'm sorry you got caught in the middle." He nodded, blinking rapidly. "I really loved her. I thought—" His voice broke. He stopped. I put a hand on his shoulder. "You'll be okay." He didn't look like he believed me. Michael and I got in the car. I pulled away slowly, watching the Foster house shrink in the rearview mirror. Paul had his arm around Sharon. Derek stood alone on the porch, staring at nothing. We drove in silence, crossed the Willamette River, past downtown. The city moved around us, joggers, cyclists, tourists, and it all felt surreal. "Dad," Michael said finally, "did we do the right thing?" I didn't answer immediately. "I don't know, Michael," I said, "but it was the necessary thing." He nodded slowly. "She's going to hate us." "Probably." As if on cue, my phone buzzed. "Caroline, I hate you." I deleted it without responding. Michael saw. He didn't say anything. Monday morning. Harold and I drove to Malcolm Reed's office in downtown Portland. It was a modest space, second-floor wood paneling shelves lined with vintage timepieces in glass cases. Reed met us at the door. He was in his late 50s, graying at the temples, wearing a cardigan and wire-rimmed glasses. He looked like a university professor. "Mr. Morrison," he said, shaking my hand. "I'm terribly sorry about all of this. I had no idea the watch was stolen." "I know," I said. "Thank you for being cooperative." He led us to his desk and pulled out a folder. Inside was the receipt cash transaction, $100,000, dated 3 weeks ago. The seller's name, Caroline Hayes. She used a slightly different name, Reed said. Hayes instead of Morrison. I didn't think anything of it at the time. Harold leaned forward. "Did she provide documentation of ownership?" Reed nodded. "She had papers, a certificate of authenticity, a maintenance record. They looked legitimate." He paused. "Oh, now I realize they must have been forged. Or stolen from my files," I said quietly. Harold cleared his throat. Mr. Reed, legally stolen property must be returned to the rightful owner, even if the buyer purchased it in good faith. Reed's face fell. Of course, I understand. But I'm out $100,000. You can file a civil suit against Caroline, Harold said, to recover the funds. And the criminal charges? Reed looked at me. Will you be pressing charges? I hesitated. Harold had already briefed me. Grand theft in Oregon, anything over $1,000 was a felony. A watch worth $100,000 put Caroline squarely in Class B territory. 5 to 10 years in prison if convicted. I need to think about it, I said. Reed nodded. He stood and walked to a small safe in the corner. Opened it, pulled out a familiar rosewood box. He set it on the desk in front of me. I believe this belongs to you, he said quietly. I stared at the box. My hands were shaking. I reached for it slowly. Opened the lid. The watch sat nestled in cream-colored silk. Patek Philippe Calatrava, 1952. 18-karat white gold, manual wind, the crystal gleamed. The band was exactly as Victoria had left it, worn smooth at the clasp, a tiny scratch near the buckle. I lifted it out. The weight of it was immediate familiar. I turned it over. The engraving on the back was still sharp to Victoria with all my love. Dad. It's in perfect condition, Reed said. I had it serviced after I bought it. New movement cleaning band polished. I hope that's all right. It's fine, I managed. Thank you. I held it for a long moment, then slowly I fastened it around my wrist. It had been 2 years since I'd worn it. 2 years since Victoria had taken it off for the last time, her hands trembling, her wrists so thin I could see every bone. She'd handed it to me and said, "Keep it safe." Now it was back. The clasp clicked shut. The watch settled against my wrist, heavy, solid, real. I could feel the seconds ticking against my skin. For a moment I felt whole. Then I looked up and saw Michael watching me, his expression unreadable. And I remembered what it had cost to get here. A daughter who hated me, a family fractured, a young man's heart broken, a woman who'd cried because a gift she'd loved had been tainted with theft. The watch ticked steadily. Perfect, precise, unstoppable, like nothing had ever been wrong. Harold drove me home. Michael had gone back to his apartment. I sat in the living room with the lights off, staring at the watch on my wrist. It glowed faintly, luminous hands marking 4:47 p.m. My phone buzzed. Caroline, you're a monster. I set the phone down without deleting it this time. Just stared at it. Then at the watch. Then at the photo of Victoria on the side table, smiling in her wedding dress, the watch on her wrist. I didn't know if I was a monster. I didn't know if I'd done the right thing. I only knew that the watch was back, and that it felt like both a victory and a loss. I closed my eyes and listened to the ticking. It sounded like time running out. Wednesday night, Michael showed up with Chinese takeout, and guilt written all over his face. We ate in the dining room, mostly in silence. Lo mein orange chicken egg rolls we didn't finish. He pushed food around his plate with a fork, barely eating. Finally, he spoke. Caroline's been texting me. She calls me a traitor. Says I chose you over her. I set down my chopsticks. Did you? He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. I chose the truth over her lies. But Dad, she's still my sister. I keep thinking about when we were kids. She wasn't always like this. People change, Michael. Your mother's death, it broke something in all of us. Caroline just broke in a different way. He nodded slowly. I miss Mom. I do too, son. Every day. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Michael stood to leave. At the door, he hugged me, really hugged me, the kind of hug we hadn't shared in years. When he pulled back, his eyes were wet. "Mom would be proud of you," he said. I watched him walk to his car, and I thought Victoria would be proud of him too. Over the next few days, I heard about Caroline through Michael's network of mutual friends. The picture wasn't pretty. Derek had blocked her everywhere: phone, social media, email. Sharon had told the extended foster family what happened. Caroline's reputation in Derek's circle was destroyed. Reed's lawyer had sent a demand letter: return $100,000 within 30 days or face a civil lawsuit. Caroline didn't have the money. She'd spent $90,000 on the necklace and $10,000 paying off personal debts, credit cards, small loans, things she'd let pile up. Then she lost her job. Marketing firm downtown. The timing was suspicious, but Michael couldn't confirm whether it was related to the theft or just bad luck. Either way, she was unemployed. She had to move out of her nice apartment near the Pearl District. Relocated to a smaller, cheaper place across the river. Studio. No parking. Sketchy neighborhood. Financial ruin stacking up piece by piece. Michael came over again the following Saturday. He looked exhausted. "She's struggling, Dad," he said. I know she brought this on herself, but it's hard watching her suffer." "That's what consequences look like, Michael," I said. "They're supposed to be hard. That's what makes them consequences." He nodded, but he didn't look convinced. Then he asked the question I'd been avoiding. "Are you going to press charges?" I'd been thinking about it every day since the barbecue. Grand theft, Class B felony, 5 to 10 years in prison. Caroline with a criminal record. Caroline unemployable. Caroline's life permanently marked by what she'd done. "Every day I think about it," I said slowly. "Sending her to prison. It wouldn't bring your mother peace, and it would destroy Caroline completely. She's going to have to live with what she did. That punishment is enough." Michael stared at his hands. "What if she never learns? What if she just stays like this?" "Then that's her choice," I said. "I can't force her to grow up." He looked at me for a long moment. "Do you think you'll ever forgive her?" I thought about that. About the daughter I'd raised. The woman who'd stolen from me. The stranger who hated me. "If she asks," I said. "Really asks. Not because she got caught, but because she understands what she took from me. If she gets there, then yes. I'll forgive her." We both knew that probably wasn't going to happen. 2 weeks later, someone knocked on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. Michael had called earlier to say he'd be out of town for work. Harold only visited by appointment. My first thought, absurdly, was that it might be Carolyn. I opened the door. It wasn't Caroline. It was Paul Foster. He stood on my porch holding a manila envelope, his expression somber. "Daniel," he said. "Do you have a minute?" I stepped aside. "Come in." He followed me to the living room, sat on the couch, set the envelope on the coffee table between us. "Derek's been a mess," Paul said without preamble. "Hasn't been sleeping, barely eating. He loved her, Daniel, really loved her, and finding out what she did, it broke him." "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. Paul nodded. "He asked me to give you this." He tapped the envelope. "It's his statement, for the police. If you decide to press charges, he'll testify. He'll tell them everything he knows, the timeline, the lies, the necklace. He wants you to know he's on your side." I stared at the envelope. I haven't decided yet. I know, Paul said. And I'm not here to pressure you. I just wanted you to know Derek wants justice, not for himself, for you, and for Victoria. He stood to leave. At the door, he paused. For what it's worth, Daniel, I think you did the right thing. At the barbecue, confronting her. You gave her a chance to tell the truth, and she chose to double down on lies. That's on her. After he left, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the envelope. Inside was Derek's handwritten statement. 3 pages, detailed, damning. I read it twice. Then I put it in a drawer and didn't look at it again. Not yet. Paul Foster showed up on a Saturday morning, 2 weeks after the barbecue, holding 2 cups of coffee. Thought you might need some company, he said when I opened the door. I hadn't been expecting him, hadn't been expecting anyone. But I stepped aside and let him in. We sat on the back porch. The morning was cool, overcast, the kind of gray Portland day that felt like it might rain, but never quite committed. Paul handed me one of the coffees, black, no sugar, exactly how I took it, and sat in the chair across from me. How are you holding up? He asked. I'm fine, I said automatically. Paul gave me a look that said he didn't believe me. That wasn't easy. What you did at the barbecue, confronting her in front of everyone. No, I admitted. It wasn't. He nodded slowly, staring out at the yard. Sharon and I almost ended 10 years ago. Her mother was dying from Alzheimer's. The pressure, it nearly broke us. I learned that family crises either pull you together or tear you apart. Sounds like Caroline chose to break instead of bend. I appreciated that. The understanding. The fact that he wasn't here to judge or pry, just to sit with me in the wreckage. Derek's been asking about you, Paul said after a moment. He feels guilty, like he should have known. Tell him I don't blame him, I said. He's a good kid. He'll be okay. He learned something important, I think. That integrity matters more than keeping the peace. Paul finished his coffee and stood to leave. At the door, he paused. If you need anything, coffee, conversation, help with something, call me. I mean it. Thank you, Paul, I said. That means more than you know. He came back 2 more times over the next month. We didn't talk about Caroline much. Mostly we talked about nothing, work, the Blazers, the weather. But having him there, someone who understood without needing me to explain, made the silence a little less heavy. 7 weeks after the barbecue, Victoria's birthday arrived. October 10th. She would have been 61. Michael and I drove to the overlook at Cannon Beach, the place Victoria had loved where we'd scattered some of her ashes 2 years ago. The ocean stretched out gray and endless waves crashing against the rocks below. I wore the Patek Philippe. It felt right. Michael brought lilies, her favorite. We set them on the stone bench where we used to sit with her watching the sunset. Do you think Mom knows? Michael asked quietly. To what happened if there's an afterlife? I looked at the watch on my wrist. If there is, she knows, and she's furious with Caroline, and proud of us. Michael smiled faintly. Yeah, she would be. We stood in silence for a while, listening to the wind and the waves. I kept my promise, I said aloud, speaking to Victoria like she could hear me. I kept it safe. I got it back. Michael glanced at me, then out at the ocean. She taught me to ride a bike right over there. He pointed to the parking lot behind us. Took her 3 hours. She never lost her patience. Not once. I remembered. Victoria running beside him, one hand on the seat, her laughter when he finally found his balance and pedaled away on his own. She was good at that, I said. Patience. Better than us, Michael said. We laughed. Then we cried a little. Then we sat on the bench and watched the ocean until the cold drove us back to the car. On the drive home, Michael asked the question I'd been waiting for. "What do you think Mom would want for Caroline?" I thought about that, about Victoria's fierceness, her sense of justice, but also her capacity for love. "She'd want Caroline to learn," I said, "to grow up. But she'd also want us to be okay without Caroline's forgiveness, to move forward." "Mom was always better at tough love than we gave her credit for," Michael said. "Yeah," I agreed. "She was." When we got back to the house, Michael walked me to the door. Before he left, he asked one more question. "What if Caroline called right now and apologized, really apologized, would you forgive her?" I looked at the watch on my wrist. It caught the light gleaming softly. "Ask me again in a year," I said. It wasn't a no, but it wasn't a yes either. Michael nodded. He understood. After he left, I went inside and sat in Victoria's chair. Looked at the wedding photo on the side table. She was smiling, radiant, her father's watch on her wrist. I touched the watch on my own wrist. Felt the seconds ticking. Time didn't heal everything, but it gave you space to breathe, space to think, space to decide what forgiveness might look like if it ever came. For now, that was enough. Getting the watch back didn't mean I could keep it the way I had before. A month after the barbecue, I realized the cabinet in my study wasn't enough. Not anymore. Caroline had proven that locks could be bypassed, that trust could be weaponized, that even in your own home, nothing was truly safe. I researched options. Home safe versus bank safety deposit box. Harold walked me through the pros and cons insurance access documentation. In the end, the choice was clear. Safety deposit box, fully insured, paper trail. No one could touch it without my explicit permission. I also updated my will. Harold drew up the papers the watch would go to Michael, not Carolyn. Unless she reconciled, unless she made amends, the watch would never be hers. The following week, I drove to the bank in downtown Portland. A large branch, marble floors, security cameras everywhere. A clerk led me to the vault, and I placed the rosewood box inside the metal drawer, alongside Victoria's other valuables, her wedding ring photographs, a journal she'd kept during treatment. I looked at the watch one last time before closing the drawer. Ran my finger over the crystal, the band, the engraving on the back. "You wore this for 30 years," I said softly. "I'll keep you safe for the next 30. The clerk locked the drawer, handed me the key. Walking out of the bank, I felt lighter. Not because I'd let go of Victoria, I'd never do that, but because I'd finally understood something she'd tried to teach me when she was alive. Memory lives in actions, not objects. I didn't need to see the watch every day to honor her. I just needed to live the way she would have wanted, with integrity, with boundaries, with love that didn't excuse cruelty. For the first time since Victoria died, I didn't drive straight home. I took the coastal highway out to Cannon Beach, parked at the overlook, watched the sunset paint the ocean gold and orange. The waves crashed below. Seagulls circled overhead. The air smelled like salt and pine. I sat on the bench where Victoria and I used to sit, where we'd brought the kids when they were young, where she'd asked me to scatter some of her ashes after she was gone. I felt something I hadn't felt in 2 years. Peace. Not the absence of pain. Not forgetting. Just space to breathe. Space to remember her without the weight of rage and betrayal pressing on my chest. I stayed until the sun disappeared below the horizon, the sky fading from orange to purple to deep blue. Then I drove home. 2 months later, a letter arrived. No return address, but I recognized Caroline's handwriting immediately. Slanted, looping the same handwriting she'd had since high school. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. Inside was a single page handwritten on lined notebook paper. Dad, I know you're angry. I know I messed up. I took the watch, and I shouldn't have. I see that now. But I didn't think it mattered that much to you. It was just sitting there in that cabinet untouched like a relic. I thought if I could do something good with it, something meaningful, it would be better than letting it collect dust. I've lost everything. Derek won't talk to me. Sharon blocked me. I lost my job. I had to move to a terrible apartment. My reputation is destroyed. Isn't that punishment enough? Mr. Reed's lawyer is demanding $100,000. I don't have it. I can't pay him back. If you could help me with this, just this one thing, I promise I'll pay you back. I swear. I'm your daughter. Doesn't that mean something, Caroline? I read it twice, looking for the apology I needed to see, looking for remorse, for understanding. It wasn't there. She admitted taking the watch, yes, but she still didn't understand why it mattered. She still blamed external forces, stress, grief, pressure, feeling inadequate. She still saw herself as the victim, and she wanted money. I set the letter down and stared out the window. The yard was turning brown, autumn settling in. The leaves on the oak tree had gone gold and started to fall. Victoria had loved autumn, said it was the most honest season, no pretending, just things dying and making space for what came next. I wondered what she would say if she were here, if she'd read Caroline's letter and felt the same hollow disappointment I did. Probably. Victoria had never tolerated excuses. Michael came over that night. I handed him the letter without a word. He read it, his expression darkening with each line. When he finished, he set it on the table and looked at me. She still doesn't get it, does she? He said. No, I said. She doesn't. Are you going to help her? I shook my head. If I give her money, I'm telling her that what she did can be fixed with cash. That consequences can be bought off. That's not a lesson I'm willing to teach. Michael nodded slowly. What if Reed sues her? What if she ends up bankrupt? Then she ends up bankrupt, I said. She made her choices. She gets to live with them. That sounds harsh. It is harsh, I admitted. But enabling her would be worse. She needs to understand that actions have consequences. Real ones. Not ones I can wave away with a checkbook. Michael stared at the letter. Do you think she'll ever get it? Ever really understand what she did? I don't know, I said. I hope so, but I'm not holding my breath. He looked at me for a long moment. Are you okay, Dad? I thought about that, about the last 3 months, the confrontation, the recovery, the grief and rage, and slow, painful acceptance. I'm getting there, I said. Michael hugged me before he left. Mom would be proud of you, he said quietly. I hoped he was right. After he left, I sat in Victoria's chair and read Caroline's letter one more time. Then I folded it carefully and put it in a drawer with the other painful memories I wasn't ready to throw away, but couldn't bear to look at. Maybe someday Caroline would understand what she'd really taken from me. Maybe someday she'd see that it wasn't about the watch's value in dollars, but its value in memory, in connection. In the 30 years Victoria had worn it, through joy and suffering. But that day wasn't today, and I was learning to be okay with that. 6 months after the barbecue, life looked different. Not better exactly, just different. It was February, cold. Rain instead of snow the way Portland winters always were. I'd fallen into new routines, small ones, the kind that held you together when the big things fell apart. Work was steady. I'd taken on a few new clients, consulting projects that kept my mind occupied without demanding too much. Mornings I made coffee and read the paper. Evenings I cooked simple meals or ordered takeout. Twice a week I went to a grief support group at the community center. I'd resisted it. At first thought it would be performative or maudlin, but it turned out to be the opposite. Just people sitting in a circle drinking bad coffee talking about the people they'd lost. It helped. I had dinner with Harold once a month. Coffee with Paul Foster had become a regular thing every other Saturday, a local cafe near the river. We talked about work sports, the city. Sometimes we talked about Caroline and Derek. Mostly we didn't. Michael came by twice a week, sometimes more. Our relationship had shifted after the barbecue deepened maybe. Or maybe it had just been stripped of pretense. We didn't talk around things anymore. We said what we meant. He was the one who told me Derek was doing better. Paul says he's dating someone new, Michael said one night over pizza. Nothing serious, but he's getting out seeing people. That's good, I said. He deserves to be happy. He asks about you. Through Paul. I nodded. I'd thought about reaching out to Derek a few times. Thought about calling, seeing how he was doing. But I always stopped myself. It wasn't my place. Derek needed to heal on his own terms, not because I felt guilty about what Caroline had done to him. Around the same time, I started going through Victoria's things again. Not everything, not all at once, just sorting. Deciding what to keep, what to donate, what to pass on. Her clothes went to a women's shelter. Her books went to the library. I kept the jewelry, her wedding ring, a necklace her mother had given her, a bracelet Michael had bought her one Christmas. Someday, maybe those would go to Michael's wife, if he ever had one. I kept the photographs, the journals, the small things that held her voice, her handwriting, her presence. And then I found a journal I'd never read before. It was leather-bound, tucked in the back of her nightstand drawer. Her handwriting on the first page, February to August last year, the last year of her life. I almost didn't open it, almost put it back, told myself I wasn't ready. But I sat down on the edge of the bed and turned to the first entry. Most of it was mundane doctor's appointments, grocery lists, notes about the garden. But halfway through, I found an entry dated 6 months before she died. I'm worried about Caroline and Daniel after I'm gone. They're too different. Daniel holds on too tight. Caroline lets go too easily. I hope they find a way to understand each other. I hope Daniel knows that loving her might mean letting her fall sometimes. I read it twice, my throat tight. A few pages later, another entry. Caroline is strong-willed, but she confuses strength with rigidity. She needs to learn that vulnerability isn't weakness, that asking for help isn't failure. I hope she learns this before it's too late. I won't be here forever to smooth the world for her. And then near the end of the journal, an entry about the watch. I told Daniel to keep the watch safe for Caroline. When she's ready, really ready to understand its value, it should belong to her. But not before. Some things you have to earn through maturity, not just time. I closed the journal and sat in silence. Victoria had seen it. Not the specifics, maybe, but the potential. She'd known Caroline struggled with emotional depth, with valuing the invisible things, memory, connection, legacy. And in her own way, she'd prepared me for this. She'd trusted me to hold the line, to keep the boundaries, to not enable Caroline's immaturity just because it was easier than confrontation. I opened the journal again and read the entry one more time. I hope Daniel knows that loving her might mean letting her fall sometimes. I did know. Now at least. I set the journal on the nightstand and looked at Victoria's photo on the dresser. It was the one from our wedding day, her smiling radiant, her father's watch on her wrist. I hope she learns, I said aloud. I really do. The room was quiet. The house was quiet. But for the first time in over 2 years, the silence didn't hurt. It just was. I stood and carried the journal to the living room where I'd been organizing Victoria's keepsakes. I placed it in a box with her letters, her other journals, the things I wanted to keep close. Victoria had known. Maybe not the details, but the shape of it. The potential for fracture, and she'd trusted me to handle it. 6 months had passed since the barbecue. 6 months since I'd confronted Caroline in front of Derek's family. 6 months since I'd gotten the watch back. In another 6 months, maybe I'd have different answers. Maybe Caroline would reach out again, and this time the apology would be real. Maybe Derek would call and we'd have coffee and he'd tell me he was engaged to someone who treated him the way he deserved. Or maybe none of that would happen. Maybe I'd just feel more at peace with the questions. I closed the box and set it on the shelf. Looked around the living room. The furniture Victoria had picked out, the photos on the walls, the orchid on the windowsill that I'd somehow managed to keep alive. The house still felt like hers. It probably always would. But it felt like mine, too. Finally. I made a cup of tea and sat in her chair. Turned on a lamp, opened a book I'd been meaning to read. Outside, the rain tapped against the windows. Inside, I was okay. 1 year after the barbecue, Michael called with news. "Dad," he said, his voice bright with excitement. "I'm engaged." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Then the joy hit me all at once. "Michael, that's wonderful. Tell me about her." "Her name's Emma. She's a teacher, 3rd grade. I met her 6 months ago at a friend's wedding. Dad, she's amazing. I want you to meet her." "Bring her over," I said. "Anytime." They came the following Saturday. Emma was 30, warm and easy to talk to, with dark hair pulled back in a loose braid and a smile that reached her eyes. She brought flowers, sunflowers, bright and cheerful, and set them on the kitchen counter like she'd been doing it for years. We ate dinner at my place. I made pasta, nothing fancy, but Emma complimented everything and asked questions about the house, about Victoria, about the photos on the walls. She listened the way people rarely do, fully present, genuinely interested. Over dinner, I watched the way she and Michael moved around each other. The small touches, the shared glances, the way she laughed at his jokes, even when they weren't that funny. She reminded me of Victoria. Not in appearance, but in presence, kind, steady, genuine. After we ate, Emma stepped outside to take a phone call from her mother. Michael turned to me, suddenly serious. "Dad, I need to ask you something." "Anything, son?" He hesitated, twisting his napkin in his hands. "I want to give Emma Mom's engagement ring, if you're okay with that." I felt my throat tighten. Victoria's ring. White gold, a single diamond, simple and elegant. She'd worn it for 30 years. I'd put it in the safety deposit box alongside the watch, thinking maybe someday it would go to Caroline. But Caroline wasn't here. Caroline hadn't earned it. Michael had. "Your mother would love that," I said. "She would have loved Emma." Michael's eyes went bright with relief. "You think so?" "I know so," I said. "She has your mother's kindness, her warmth. Victoria would have seen that in 5 minutes." Michael nodded, blinking rapidly. "Thank you, Dad." Emma came back inside, and the 3 of us sat in the living room drinking coffee and talking about wedding plans. She wanted something small, she said. Intimate. Just family and close friends. Michael grinned and said that sounded perfect. I thought about Victoria, about our wedding at Cannon Beach, just 20 people, the ocean crashing behind us as we said our vows. Simple. Perfect. That's how your mother and I did it, I said. Small and meaningful. It's the right way. Emma smiled. Michael told me. He showed me the photos. Your wife was beautiful. She was, I said. Inside and out. After they left, I sat in the quiet house and thought about the ring. About passing it to Michael. about Victoria's legacy continuing in a way that felt right. The next day, we drove to the bank together. It was a Saturday morning, the streets quiet, the sky overcast. Michael was nervous, kept checking his pocket like the ring might already be there. We parked and walked into the lobby past the tellers to the vault in the back. The clerk unlocked my safety deposit box, and I pulled it out carefully, set it on the table in the small private room they provided. Inside was Victoria's ring nestled in black velvet. Beside it, the rosewood box containing the watch. I lifted the ring out carefully, held it up to the light. The diamond caught the fluorescence, scattering tiny rainbows across the wall. "It's perfect," Michael said softly. I handed it to him, watched him turn it over in his hands, his expression reverent. "She wore this every day," I said. "Through everything. Good days and hard days. She never took it off. She'd be so proud to see you give it to someone who deserves it." Michael closed his hand around the ring, his eyes damp. "Thank you, Dad." While we were there, I opened the rosewood box. The watch gleamed up at me, perfect, untouched, exactly as I'd left it. I ran my finger over the crystal, once feeling the cool smoothness of the glass. Then I closed the lid. Still safe, still protected, still waiting for someone who might never be ready. Michael noticed. "The watch," he said quietly. "Yeah. Do you ever think about giving it to her, to Caroline?" I thought about that. About the letter she'd sent, the non-apology, the request for money. About the silence that had followed. "When she's ready," I said. "Really ready. Not before." Michael nodded. He understood. We walked out to the parking lot together. Michael slipped the ring into his jacket pocket, zipping it carefully. The August sun was breaking through the clouds, warm on our faces. "Mom would have liked her, wouldn't she?" Michael asked. "So Emma." "Very much," I said. "She would have seen what I see, that you chose someone who values what really matters. Love, kindness, integrity." Michael smiled, then hesitated. "Have you heard from Caroline?" "No," I said. "Have you—" "She sent a card. When I told her I was engaged, just said congratulations. Nothing else. No apology, no explanation, no request to meet Emma or be involved in the wedding." We stood in silence, the weight of that absence settling between us like fog. "Do you think she'll ever come around?" Michael asked quietly. "I don't know," I said. "I hope so. But I can't spend my life waiting for her to figure it out. And neither can you." "I know," he said. I wish Mom was here. For this. For the proposal, the wedding, all of it." "She is here," I said. "In that ring. In Emma's kindness. In the fact that you chose someone who sees the world the way your mother did, with compassion and honesty." Michael's eyes went damp. He nodded, unable to speak for a moment. "You're going to have a good life, Michael," I said. "The kind of life your mother wanted for you. The kind she and I built together. That's her legacy, not the watch, not the ring. You." He pulled me into a hug, tight, fierce, the kind of hug that said everything words couldn't. "Thank you, Dad," he said, his voice muffled against my shoulder. "For everything, for not letting me make excuses for her, for showing me what integrity looks like, for being the kind of man Mom loved." I held him for a long moment, then stepped back. "Your mother would be so proud of you. And I am too." He pulled back, smiling through tears. "I'll call you after I propose. Let you know how it goes." "She'll say yes," I said. How do you know?" "Because you're your mother's son, and Emma's smart enough to see that." Michael laughed, wiping his eyes. "I love you, Dad. I love you too, son." I watched him drive away, the ring in his pocket, and hope in his eyes. The sun was fully out now, burning off the last of the morning clouds. The parking lot was filling up Saturday errands, families, couples, life moving forward. 1 year ago, I'd lost a daughter, but I'd kept a son, and I'd kept Victoria's memory intact, not locked away in a vault, but alive in the way Michael lived, in the choices he made, in the woman he'd chosen to marry. Sometimes that was the best you could do. I drove home slowly, windows down, taking the long way along the river. The city was alive, runners on the waterfront, kayakers on the water street, musicians on the corners. When I got home, the sunflowers Emma had brought were still on the counter, bright against the gray afternoon light filtering through the windows. I made coffee and sat in Victoria's chair, looked at her photo on the side table, smiling, radiant, her engagement ring on her finger in that long-ago wedding photo from Cannon Beach. "She's a good one," I said aloud. "You would have loved her." The silence didn't answer, but I felt somehow that Victoria heard me, and that she agreed. After Michael left with the ring, I sat alone in the house, the afternoon light slanting through the windows in long golden bars. I thought about the last year, everything that had happened, everything that had changed. The confrontation at the barbecue, the watch recovered and locked away, Caroline's silence, Michael's engagement, Victoria's journal, her words reaching across death to guide me. I thought about what I'd really been protecting all along. Not a watch, not an object, no matter how valuable or sentimental. I'd been protecting principles. Victoria's legacy wasn't the Patek Philippe on her wrist or the ring on her finger. It was the values she'd lived by, the standards she'd held even when holding them was hard. Integrity, doing the right thing even when it cost you. Boundaries, not allowing cruelty in the name of family. Respect, for memory, for others, for truth. Accountability. Actions have consequences. And love, real love, the kind strong enough to say no when yes would be easier. Caroline had rejected that legacy by stealing and refusing to understand what she'd taken. Michael had embraced it by standing for truth even when it tore his family apart. I'd taught Michael what Victoria would have taught him, that love without boundaries isn't love, it's enabling. That legacy is passed through actions and choices, not words or objects. I thought about Caroline. Still no real apology. Still no understanding. My anger had faded months ago, burned out like a fire that had run out of fuel. What remained was sadness. Sadness for the daughter I'd raised, the woman she'd become, the gulf between who she was and who she could have been. I hoped she'd find her way eventually, find someone who'd tell her the hard truths, find rock bottom and decide to climb back up. But I'd made peace with the possibility that she never would. That was her choice, and I couldn't control it. I could only control my own integrity. I visited the watch sometimes at the bank, took it out on special occasions. Michael's engagement party next month, Victoria's birthday. I'd wear it for a few hours, feel its weight on my wrist, then return it to the vault. I didn't need constant physical possession anymore. Victoria's memory lived in how I lived my life, not in what I owned. The following Saturday, I drove to the Oregon coast again. Cannon Beach. Late afternoon. The sun hung low over the Pacific, painting the water in shades of gold and copper. The beach was nearly empty, a few joggers, a couple walking their dog, a family packing up their picnic. I wore the Patek Philippe today. Felt right somehow to bring it here, to the place Victoria had loved, the place we'd scattered some of her ashes. I sat on a piece of driftwood, smooth and gray from years of salt and sun, and watched the waves roll in. Steady, relentless, timeless. I looked at the watch on my wrist, not to check the time, but to remember the woman who'd worn it for 30 years, who'd checked it in hospital waiting rooms and at school plays and on ordinary Tuesday mornings, who'd glanced at it the day the doctor said 6 months, like she was calculating how many seconds she had left. I thought about the fight to protect her memory, the cost of it. Had it been worth losing, Caroline, yes. Because some things were sacred. Because teaching Michael that lesson mattered more than enabling Caroline's cruelty. Because Victoria would have done the same. I knew that now from her journal, from the way she'd prepared me without even realizing it. I hope Daniel knows that loving her might mean letting her fall sometimes. She'd known. She'd always known. The sun dropped lower, touching the horizon. The sky turned orange, then pink, then deep purple. The temperature dropped, the breeze turning cool. I felt something I hadn't felt in 2 years. Peace. Real peace. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of certainty. I'd done the right thing, even though it had cost me dearly. Michael would carry the legacy forward. He'd give Emma the ring. Someday, maybe they'd have children, and he'd tell them about their grandmother, about her strength, her kindness, her refusal to compromise on what mattered. And Caroline. Maybe she'd come back someday. Maybe she'd finally understand what she'd destroyed and try to rebuild it. Or maybe she wouldn't. And I was okay with either outcome, because I'd learned what Victoria had tried to teach me all along. Family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up, who respects your boundaries, who honors what you hold sacred. Victoria had taught me that when she was alive. And in protecting her memory, I'd learned it all over again. Some people would ask if I'd gone too far. Others would say I hadn't gone far enough. The truth, I'd done what was necessary to protect the people I loved, both living and dead. Caroline had made her choices. I'd made mine. And I could live with mine. I stood brushing sand off my jeans. The sun had disappeared below the horizon, leaving only a thin line of orange light. Stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. I looked at the watch one more time. 6:47 p.m. The second hand swept forward smooth and precise, ticking toward the future. I walked back to the car windows, down, radio off. Drove home through the twilight, past the river and the bridges and the city lights beginning to glow. When I got home, I didn't go straight inside. I stood in the driveway for a moment looking at the house. The porch light was on the way Victoria used to leave it. The orchid in the window still blooming. Inside, I made dinner, poured a glass of wine, sat in Victoria's chair and opened a book. The house was quiet, but it wasn't the painful silence of grief anymore. It was just quiet, peaceful, home. I thought about posting the story online, about asking people what they would have done in my place, about starting a conversation on boundaries, family, legacy, the things we owe the dead. Maybe I would. Maybe someone needed to hear it. Maybe someone was sitting in their own version of my living room, wondering if they were wrong to hold the line, to say no, to protect what mattered, even when it meant losing someone they loved. Maybe they needed to know they weren't alone. What would you do if you were me? Would you have confronted Caroline publicly? Would you have pressed charges? Would you have forgiven her by now? Let me know in the comments. And if this story made you think about family, about boundaries, about what we owe the people we've lost, subscribe. Because sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones most worth sharing. The sun had set completely now. Outside, the streetlights glowed softly. Inside, the house was warm and still. I looked at the watch on my wrist, ticking steadily forward, and for the first time in 2 years, I felt like I was moving forward with it. Looking back now, I don't pretend that I handled everything perfectly. I didn't. There were moments when I hesitated, moments when emotion clouded judgment, moments when grief made me softer than I should have been. But if there's one thing I can stand behind without regret, it's this: I handled it with integrity. And in the end, integrity matters more than perfection ever could. This family story taught me lessons I wish I had learned earlier, and lessons I hope you never have to learn the hard way. First, don't wait for betrayal to teach you about boundaries. By the time betrayal shows up, the damage is already done. Boundaries aren't punishments. They're protections. Set them early. Enforce them calmly, lovingly, but firmly. Because the people who truly love you won't feel threatened by your boundaries, they'll respect them. And the ones who fight them were never really standing on your side to begin with. Second, don't confuse tolerance with love. Tolerance lets things slide. Love tells the truth. Real love says no when yes would slowly destroy someone. Real love is willing to be misunderstood today to prevent disaster tomorrow. God gave us free will, but He also gave us consequences. And both are gifts, because consequences are how we grow when pride refuses to listen. And please don't let grief make you vulnerable to manipulation. Loss softens us. It opens cracks in our judgment. When Victoria died, I almost let sentiment override principle. I almost convinced myself that time alone equals maturity. But through her journal, God reminded me of something simple and uncomfortable. Some things must be earned through responsibility, not just years lived. That wisdom stopped me from enabling Caroline's self-destruction, even when it would have been easier to look away. Some people labeled what happened as dad revenge. They were wrong. This wasn't dad revenge. Revenge seeks to harm. Revenge feeds on anger. What I did wasn't about punishment, it was about protection. Protecting values. Protecting legacy. Protecting what generations before me built with sacrifice and discipline. God doesn't call us to be reckless with what we're entrusted with. He calls us to be good stewards. And stewardship sometimes requires hard decisions that look cruel to people who only see the surface. If you're facing something similar, betrayal, theft, manipulation, or a family story being torn apart by greed, hear this clearly. You are not wrong to hold the line. You are not heartless for enforcing consequences. And you are not alone for choosing principle over peace. Would I do it again? Yes. Every single time. Because some battles are worth fighting, and some legacies are worth defending, even if it costs relationships that were already broken long before you took a stand. Thank you for staying with me through this family story. If this resonated with you, drop a 2 in the comments. I read every single one. And just so we're clear, this narrative includes fictionalized elements designed to spark reflection on boundaries, legacy, and tough love. If this isn't your cup of tea, no hard feelings at all. There's plenty of content out there for everyone. But if this made you stop and think, if it challenged you, if it reminded you that love sometimes has to be firm, then hit subscribe. Because the hardest stories are often the ones we need to hear the most.